I first heard Maggie Queeney read at the Wild and Precious Life series that's produced by Dustin Brookshire. And I bought her book, Settler, after that and loved it. And then I got a promotional email from a publicist, and there was Maggie Queeney's name with a new book in kind. And so I invited her to come and read, and she was gracious enough to agree. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. She's the author of In Kind, which I mentioned, which won the 2022 Iowa Poetry Prize, and of course, Settler, which was published by Tupelo Press. She received the 2019 Stanley Kunitz Memorial Prize, the Ruth Stone Scholarship, and an Individual Artist Program grant from the City of Chicago in 2019 and again in 2022. Her most recent work can be found in the Kenyon Review, Guernica, the Missouri Review, and the American Poetry Review. She holds an MFA in creative writing from Syracuse University, and she reads and writes in Chicago. Welcome, Maggie, and thank you so much for coming to read for us.
Judy, thank you so much for having me. I'm also super excited to say SoFloPoJo, but also I'm really afraid I'm going to mess it up. But as David was saying, it's really fun to say out loud. Yeah, and it's such a pleasure and honor to be here with David. Your poems were gorgeous. Thank you. Yeah, so I think that tonight, depending on where we are, I'm going to read mostly from In Kind, if that's okay. I have my little thing on, so you probably can't see it. And I don't think I have a lot to preface. This is only like my third time reading from the book, so I don't really have any patter down, so hopefully you'll forgive me. But I do want to say that a lot of the poems do address domestic violence and gendered violence. So I just want to put that out there and remind folks that this is meant to be a comfortable space. So whatever you need to do to make yourself comfortable, please do so. I'm going to read, I don't know, I'm going to read maybe like 7 poems, but they're all a little bit, some of them are a little bit longer. The first poem I'm going to read is a poem that is about my name, which is an assignment that I think a lot of poets get. No one ever gave it to me, so I gave it to myself. And my given name is Margaret, but nobody ever calls me that. So even when I'm like at the doctor's office and they're like, Margaret, like I'll just be sitting there. So I decided to write a poem about my name. And it's called My Given Name, and it starts with a quotation from the Golden Legend about Saint Margaret. And that quote says, "And there was seen a marvelous brightness in the prison by the keepers, and there appeared an horrible dragon. It is said that he swallowed her in his belly, she making the sign of the cross, and the belly brake asunder, and so she issued out all whole and sound." And everyone can hear me okay? Here I am telling myself the story of myself again. The mammal of me lowing my lone note, grit both the middle and the start of it. A bit of sand or shell shard, the hard speck of stone or flint or bone or beak. What cannot be broken back into nothing, but offers an ever smaller division. This is what made me what I am. Mar as in mark, as in wound, as in sea, as the root word pearl at the center of me, damage and flaw. I freak iridescent, cultured or wild, my pet forms, magpie then maggot, magnificent imprisoned dirt, magnified to trap door, magnet of hurt, my sputtering beauty, bowing to the ground. I listen to the rush inside my body, hush of gas, blooms of blue petals ringing the jet, as nerves singing their leviathans' sibilant songs deep in the ocean of me. I ward and seal and cover. I swallow. I round into a swelling nacre moon, the only gemstone bred out of living creature. Or the woman reborn whole, limbs spilling out of the dragon's belly, the scales, neat and fat, parted and heavy as the velvet curtains framing the spotlight, the beam of hot gold gracing the tramp of me, the rough labor of me, my midwife, my insane, my orphaned, my born homeless. I spiral my shelter, my own shell of bone. My reptile mother formed over my body a bell that gleams and refuses to sing. Tongued into a stone shard looked harmless, hearted in an arrowhead fitted to a pin. Her skin grown through the armor, the fur grown over the scar of the collar. So I like to write a lot of series of poems. So I have a series in this book that are the glamour poems, which are all poems that are titled glamour and kind of are centered around or devolve from like the different definitions of glamour. Glamour, the look I am hunting, the one that through color and cut glares the starer into a skull or a skein of lightning, a switch stalled at dawn or the gloaming along an equator. What fascinates, I shine like flame-blackened foil, a rhinestone snoring at lake bottom, a Rex brass-bound astrolabe, bright as hard tender, newly minted, mewling and naked under oil-slick pleather, sieving light, prism-like, my limbs sing their siren song. Pull ribbons of pure note over the packs, snarl and bark, teeth pop, dangling chain of saliva snaps. Deep under, I stay seamless as a safe, a rust-sealed letterbox, corroded pill case, my insides scoured to looking glass by the tangle of wind trapped, a cyclone circling the space, the size a doll's eye makes, panting my small breath. And this is another glamour. After I sought out only cover, I shied from color, from structure, from cut. I denied the body's actual size, assumed the coats of men several times larger and stronger to be able to slouch, to scrape my blackening feet over the floorboards, shake the hard music out of chain anklets, thick hoops and bangle bracelets. My only magic was sympathetic. I pressed my body into whatever wild hide I could find, shield of leather, fur, sheltering roof of layered wool and turned animal. The thick silk a spider hides her eggs inside, that was me. Darkening my lids larger, coloring eye after eye, neon bright at my hair's part, to descend my sides in a second skin. I repeated, light and shade, alternate a body to walk into, glitter and shine, saved for the parts farthest from the heart. One more glamour. Glamour. A corruption of grammar. What knowledge I have come by comes through the eyes to my hands. Lightning runs the skeleton, skull to spine and phalange, dirt then grass. I gather what else can be cast, dye, a spell, a glance, lots, off, the lace edge that frets and frays when caught. I keen at the bellow, then burn the thick marrow, mar the smear of coal into a plume of smoke above the burn line. Hearth eyes, left alone too long, my long bones curdle into shatter. The gloss works my lips into a lather, and I train a tongue to slather at the word meat. I cannot say how this means. Invisible weaving, a safety net turned sideways into snare. The stockings run, pulls the eye elsewhere, worn, then wear. I trace the shape to know. I keep want from want. Silver of hammer, silver of scales, then gold. Should probably say in that glamour, I don't know if you could tell because of my Chicago accent. But it goes from Warren, W-A-R-N, to Warren, W-O-R-N, and then where. I realize I say those two words, they sound the exact same when I say them. Yeah. The next poem I'm gonna read is called Victim Root. I don't think I have anything to say about this. Yeah, except it looks like a little bit at the word victim, which they think is derived from like the verb for like to conquer. So a victim is someone who's conquered. Victim root. Even in the Latin female, I trace my mother's name, letters splayed like legs or branches. The bones I had been scolded grow, that I had read burned white in sacrifice. Told what it was to be holy as a child, I applied the dustiest rose lipstick my mother owned, chewed the buds made under the veil stained by my cheek's color, a slight bride in a sheer slip before the origin that rendered me conquered, as Victor claimed a few entries further. Each imitation pearl glowed like knowing against the knots of hair torn smooth. The floorboards groaned over my head. I was trained to hold still under a man's hands, that virtue lies in the lines of the hind, sleek ankle stuck in the air as she struck still to hide. Then, with a darkened, blushing bit of rag, I worked it off after. The female hand that arranged, the unlocking bedroom doors, lining the hall like a deck of cards, a puzzle of blank backs, the chance of the draw, the pull of the heavy curtain, the dark audience, the rehearsed gasp marking the night from evening, the white shock of glove, quick as a dove darting over the tornado-shaped gold light, ending in a halo, a hem to circle a single stockinged foot and sleek heel. I too designed to fashion another body after my body, to press that other smaller version towards into some service, the place I was made to take, impossible to identify in the dark, the daughters I will never have and never know among all the bodies that made my body, then made my body not my own. So I think I'm going to read 3 more poems. 25 minutes seems like a really long time, and/or I talk really fast, which is probably true. I always joke that I'm the 3rd out of 4 kids, so you don't talk fast, you don't get heard. But I'm going to read three more. Yeah, this one is called The Women, and I know you can't see it because I have that thing on my computer, but the poem starts left justified, and then switches over to being right justified about halfway through. And something I did a lot with this book, or poems in this book, I don't have any like shaped poems, but I like shaped poems. I feel like they get a bad rap often as being like silly or gimmicky. But you know, I feel like I like them. So I wrote some. This one's called The Women. The women more than the men even. The ones who looked like I looked, who called my name in a voice I could not identify from my own on recordings. The women who wore my cheekbones, who when they wanted to shake their younger, stupider selves, saw my smaller body always X years behind, X sizes smaller, X less. When solved for, I was the variable named accident. The second sister, the child ticking through the countdown of an explosive device, echoing down the oceanic tiles of the school hall. I was the engine of the chainsaw stalling, the ghost who splintered the cupboards, who buried the silver eel of the knife into the floor. I covered the rooms in a seamless cloud of flour, opened the front door to the night as we slept. There was no word in the languages I knew for the species of help I needed, so I dug a hole and buried the house keys in the garden, fed necklaces into the hollows of trees. I was the one who knocked from inside the ceiling, who chewed the garlands of red and blue plastic behind the walls down to each wire spine. I was the silent fire detector, the dead batteries chirping like a toy bird, the one who was never named. When summoned, I shattered the lamps, cracked the glass covering the faces inside the picture frames. To repeat is to make strange, make what happened smaller, farther away. It was the women who laughed, who asked what else I thought would happen. The women who told me they knew what I would do, that I had to come back. The women inside the fascia and bone I lived in, who doubled, then multiplied, copied my features over and over the landscape until even a thick blanket of snow was the milk blue pale of the skin that shielded us all in false innocence. How the red rose over years. An infant will be drawn to an adult with large eyes, the proportions of another newborn. I remember the faded blue, frantic darting like a bird wrapped in the soft brine of ocean air, caught in the red netting of my grandmother's eyes. That morning on the staircase when I was, I think, 5, she clutched a tumbler of orange juice, cried that he needed sugar. It's strange what children will remember and not remember. Did I look then from behind my mother's thigh? Did she need to see him bluing, his thick stillness in the rental house bed too? What is the difference between the remembered and the imagined, between wanting and action? I remember how long it took to name, to own the thick bulb of joy pressing against my breastbone, the tender, thirsting rootlets, the invisible tendrils that fractured and strangled, suckled the bright blood out of the women I come from, and then broke into bloom. So I'm going to read 2 more poems. I'm going to take a sip of water first. So instead of taking a useful language in college, I was a classics major and translated a lot of the metamorphoses, which also come into this book often. That book became really important to me. It was, I think, the first time that I saw an accurate description of the aftermath of trauma. I have complex PTSD, and the women in that book are often turned into inanimate objects after traumatic experiences, often with divine figures, often after, crimes like being sexually assaulted or like winning a contest with a goddess. So that book became really important to me and continues to be. And so I have a few kind of retellings. The first one that I'm going to read is about Proserpina, which most folks know as Persephone, but Proserpina is the Latin. And she is both the goddess that's associated with spring, but she's also the queen of the underworld, which I think is like a pretty good gig. And so this is called Metamorphosis. Proserpina, queen of the underworld, proclaims into the thaw. And again, you can't see this poem, so I apologize, but it has like a big crevasse in the middle of white space. Not so unlike the stars, the bone-bright rootlets of trees hum electric messages through the weaving that traps dirt into my ceiling. I mimic the language of seeds. My hide hull what splits like a door when scored, or the soft dissolve of groundwater pores. What travels through the hungers of others. There is no return without leaving. A cathedral of stalactites cleaves the mirror still surface of an underground lake. The tip of minerals in suspension pierces its reflection. doubles into a column, the bilateral radiation of vertebrates, seamless as a woman chewing the ends of her hair into rope. All grows toward what it knows to need. A vine climbs, then binds. There is no change without repeat. How many times did I bend without consequence to gather beauty to me in the form of a flower, golden-throated, haloed inside a bone-white starburst above a spill of green? Now, bound by what I was said to eat, no one thinks to ask what cracks open, unfurls roots into or through the dark inside my body, the half-dead half of me cared for more than any other part before. I am the hybrid plate of two strands, the one who remembers and the one who does not remember, freeze and thaw, the hibernating and the hunger that drives me back into the dream of a mother who does not have to ask what it feels like to die, the one where I do not have to ask which death, which time. And so the last poem is actually an erasure, and it's an erasure of everything in the Metamorphoses, which is a poem that's like a couple hundred pages long in English. And the only things that I left were things that women were turned into in the poem. So these are all things that women became, and it's called Metamorphoses, the female into. I'm gonna take a sip of water. Laurel tree, limbs bent and twined into crown, heifer, bank of marsh reeds, handful lashed into pipes, song in another breath, a clutch of conifers leaping amber, black bear, quarry, constellation, white crow, black crow, grass cropping mare, flames, voice repeating the last, darkened mulberry, fragrant incense seeping out of the grounds. Violet-like flower tracing the sun's path, rock, darkness seeking bats, sea goddess, rock, 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 rock. Seabirds, serpent, a prize, a bride, monster crowned in snakes, ossifer, weapon, black and white magpies arguing in your language, water flowing fountain, half alive, half dead, flock of tuneful, maiden-faced birds, one of a pair of mountains, crane, stork, ash-gray spider weaving her traps in the corners of the ceiling, corpse, 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 spring weeping into the summits anorexic air, nightingale, swallow, traitor, mother, cast off ex-wife, witch, weaver of the poisoned robe, deadly gift, filicide, unnatural, marble figure, corpse, patricide, exile, heron, diadem in the sky, guinea hens, 5 isles, a further island, linden tree, slave, then fisherman, then mare, then bird, then cow, then deer, weasel, lotus that bleeds when plucked, lotus, spring flowing from a shrub oak, male, twice dead shade, rock, whores, shame burning their bodies red into rock, myrrh, lioness, grove of oaks, halcyon, male, barking bitch snapping her jaws, snow white doves, deadly whirlpool, virgin-faced hounds snarling between her thighs, water, then nothing, a statue of a woman, a star inside her husband constellation, corpse, living female, fountain of chilled water. Thank you.